One in the audience out there could please take your seats. We are going to proceed and begin this morning. Let me say good morning to everyone. Thank you for being here on this Monday morning. Glad you are able to make it today, and welcome to our state government interim meeting for July 29th, 2024. I now officially call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please at this time call the roll and inform us at the end if we have a quorum or not?
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Elkins, present. Senator Harper Angel, Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel, Senator Nemes,
present.
Senator Storm,
Here.
Senator Thayer, Senator Wheeler,
Here.
Senator Williams, Representative Bauman,
Present.
Representative Bojanowski, Representative Bowling,
Here.
Representative Branscombe,
Here.
Representative Callaway,
Here.
Representative Camuel,
Here.
Representative Chester Burton,
Here.
Representative Decker,
Present.
Representative Gooch, here. Representative Graham,
Here.
Representative Heath,
Here.
Representative Heverin, Representative Herron,
Here.
Representative Hodgson, here. Representative Huff,
Here.
Representative Imes,
Present.
Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative Cook,
Here.
Representative Lewis,
Here.
Representative Lockett, Representative Lockett, Representative Maddox,
Here.
Representative Moser, Representative Rawlings, Representative Raymond, Representative Tate, Representative Tipton,
Here.
Representative Williams, Representative Witten,
Here.
Senator Mills,
I'm here.
Representative Bratcher, Representative Hale.
Present. And we do have a quorum. Again, thank you to all the members for showing up on a Monday morning at 11 o'clock for a meeting today. Glad you're here, and certainly hope your summer has went well. It's going by really fast, and August is almost, we'll be here in a couple days. But just a couple of housekeeping details before we begin. Be sure to silence your cell phones, everybody that's here today, if you don't mind. If you would do that, please, at this time. And remember, when you are speaking or request to speak, please make sure that your microphone is turned on and the green light is on, and then after you finish concluding that, it's turned off. At this time, we have a couple of folks I know that has some guests, and Representative Tate, go right ahead and introduce your guest to us this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce Lily Sumners. Lily is a senior at Mercy Academy, and so while she's a constituent of Senator Nemes and Representative Griffin, I get to steal her for the summer. So she's shadowing me, and I've really enjoyed her company. So if you would please make her feel welcome.
Let's make her welcome this morning. Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a constituent with me this morning. Jason Denny is the county clerk from Anderson County, and he's been great to work with. And some of you may know him. He's been over here and helped us on a lot of legislation. Glad to have him here this morning.
Is there anyone else this morning that has a guest? Representative Herron, go right ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today I have with me Representative-elect Joshua Watkins, who will be my replacement in House District 42, and so I'm excited that he's here today, and so please make him feel welcome. And
welcome.
And if you get a chance, make sure that you say
welcome, Representative-elect Watkins. We're glad to have you with us this morning. Certainly appreciate that. Anyone else? I would like to just take a moment to introduce, I have a guest with me this morning that's in the audience with us, one of my county clerks, Chris Cockrell. Chris is a county clerk from Montgomery County and does a wonderful job over there in Mount Sterling. So please make Mr. Cockrell welcome here in our meeting this morning. Seeing no other guests this morning, or seeing no one that has anybody to recognize guests, before we go to the approval, our first item would be the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. But before we go to that this morning, just something I want to bring to everyone's attention, if you don't mind. 2 years ago, yesterday, on July the 28th, here in Kentucky, we had devastating flooding that came to several counties in the eastern part of our state, and I know several people in this room are from that area. Unfortunately, we had 45 of our citizens of Kentucky that died in that tragic flooding. Hundreds and literally thousands of homes and businesses were destroyed that day, and lives were shattered and torn apart. And there's still today, 2 years later, there's a tremendous rebuilding effort happening there, and even recovery efforts for the area. And I know it's something that we certainly devastated our state. And I want to just thank the legislature for their work in this and the monies that we were able to appropriate. And also I want to thank the governor's office as well for everything that the administration done during this tragic time. And if it's appropriate, I would going to ask everybody on the committee and everybody in the audience to please stand for just a moment of silence as we remember those that lost their lives 2 years ago. Thank you. You may be seated. Appreciate that very much. The first item of business on our agenda today is the approval of the June 18th, 2024 minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting? There is a motion. Is there a second? There is a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. On our agenda today, we have first on our list today on the agenda, we have the Kentucky County Clerks Association is with us today, and they are going to come at this time. I'm not really sure who all is going to speak, but those that are going to, you may come to the table, and they are going to give us some of their 2025 legislative agenda items. And so again, we welcome you this morning. Please make sure that your microphone is on there if you don't mind. And for the record, please introduce yourself at this time.
Good morning. I'm Tabitha Clemens, Grant County Clerk and President of the Kentucky County Clerks Association. It's great to be with you this morning.
You may proceed. Go right ahead, Ms. Clemens.
Thank you. Most services that are offered by the county clerk's offices in the Commonwealth have been transformed over the last few years, whether that's modernization in our land records office, our motor vehicle system with CAVIS, or all of the laws that we have embraced with elections. Today, I've been asked to focus more on elections, but if there's any of the other areas you'd like to discuss, I just spoke about those in local government, so I don't want to be like we're on Groundhog Day, Senator Thayer. So if you have questions about those, I'm more than happy to answer them. So as I do when we come before this committee almost every single time, I want to thank you. Many of you in this room are responsible for the hard work that's went into transforming elections in Kentucky. When COVID hit, we were faced with challenges to embrace ways of voting that we had never done before. This presidential cycle will be our first cycle where we've adopted new laws, whether it's early voting or the ability to have vote centers or being able to embrace print on demand, ballot printing. All of those things are in place for us to have a very successful presidential election here in Kentucky. A few reminders for you about elections in Kentucky. All Kentucky counties have paper ballots. So as we go into this next cycle of presidential elections, there's some things that we want to make sure that this committee is aware of so that you can help us educate constituents. We use certified vendors. They're not just federally certified. We have a pretty intensive process here in the state of Kentucky that we expect a little more. And they go through a process here with our State Board of Elections in order to be certified to operate here in Kentucky. Additionally, each county board of elections, the county board of elections is made up of the county clerk, the sheriff in our county, a Republican and a Democrat member. Those four people perform accuracy testing in addition to inspections of every machine prior to the election. And this presidential election, thanks to a bill brought forth by Representative Hodgkins, will have an audit of one machine in each county. All 120 counties will participate in this audit to ensure that those machines have accurate tabulation at the end of the election. So we're really excited to be able to bring forth all of that security to our voters here in Kentucky. A few things that I want to bring up leaning into the 2025 legislative session is that money for our elections, the reimbursement rates that the county clerks or the county receive from the state have not been increased since the 1970s. So we're decades behind the legislation to ensure that we have the adequate funding that we need in order to operate elections. As you hear from many local government, whether that's from the sheriff's office, our jails, county fiscal courts, everything has increased. You're seeing that in your own state budget. We deal with vendors for many services down to just paper cost increasing, the amount of time that people want to give of themselves to be an election officer. We are struggling to find election officers. If that's a service that someone in your community wants to do, please connect them to your county clerk. We're really struggling to find enough election officers to have for our presidential election. So we want to highlight that as well. But back to the reimbursement rates, there's opportunities there for us to figure out a best path forward. We talked about some of those the last legislative session with the bills that we had, and we look forward to continuing those discussions to increase those rates. Additionally, open records request has become something that we have continued to work with our constituents who provide those open records requests. We appreciate some of the recent law changes that we've had in open records, but we are trying to figure out the best way to balance transparency with voter privacy. And we recognize that all hands are on deck prior to in the midst of a primary election or a general election. It's very hard for counties like myself, who I'm your election administrator in my county, even to the large counties like Fayette and Jefferson, where they may have additional hands to be able to put on an election. They're busy doing the task of the election. And how do we adequately respond to those open records requests without being in violation? So that's something that we want to look towards and discuss. For example, it may make sense to have the State Board of Elections, and we've had conversations with them, but have them respond to some of the requests rather than each individual county clerk. When there's blanket requests through almost every county, maybe they can be the respondents. We already do this with our voter registration data. For any of you who've ran for election, you've requested voter data from the state board. Maybe we can look towards piggybacking off of that to ensure that people's requests are being met, but that the county clerks are not burdened and our county board of elections are not burdened with all of those requests right up to the day of the election, right after the election, when we're still trying to get everything in order. We also need to determine the type of record that should be made public. That's an important part of this process that we want to have a conversation about. And then, we want to be careful when we talk about these requests, because if you have a precinct that has an extremely small number of people voting in it, it could be possible for someone to go back and try to reverse back to whose ballot that was. We've seen some of that in other states, so we want to make sure that we are not one of those states that has the ability to do that. And how can we best do that with open records request? Additionally, we look forward to, another continuous improvement bill. This is something that we've been dedicated to since the COVID election in 2020. Each year we've brought forth legislation in a bipartisan manner. We are, really successful in bringing everybody to the table through Representative Decker, Representative Hodgkins, Representative Branscom's been involved in these conversations, bringing all of us to the table and figuring out the best path forward and finding consensus. Some of the best legislation that we have is when everybody walks away from the table and is a little like, well, we didn't get everything we wanted, but we got some of what we wanted. And sometimes that's the best. So we look forward to those conversations in the future. And then, I do want to highlight more about the funding for elections briefly. While it's been 50 years since the rates have been adjusted, every element of our elections, including our full-time personnel, the requirements for retirement rates and health benefits, our poll worker pay, postage, which just went up again, Voting systems, vendor charges have all increased over the past 5 decades, yet that reimbursement rate has not. So we really want to work towards finding an adequate way for us to continue to fund elections. Additionally, there's a new thing that we all have to be concerned with in elections, which is cybersecurity. And how can we ensure that we are meeting the demands that there are in the cyberspace now? Additionally, we've been asked to cover things like video footage putting video footage on our drop boxes, on our election equipment after the election, and there's not been any reimbursement for those things. The electronic poll books is another example of that. And then increased public awareness. We have county clerks who are now working with marketing vendors to ensure that their message is being shared, because so much of the message out there is not accurate. One of the reasons I shared right at the beginning that we all have paper ballots, the security that we go through every election, is because we continue to try to get that message out, that Kentucky does have safe and secure elections. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Before I do that, I do want to mention briefly, I did mention cybersecurity. I mentioned this in the last committee hearing, but last week I was in a position to assist Jefferson County with their cybersecurity attack. I'm sure many of you have heard about this. It shut their county clerk's office down for 5 days. They are up and operational. Every office is open this morning for motor vehicle transactions. They're still working to get their land records side of the office back up and operational. But I want to thank all of the county clerks as far as Pike, all the way down to Cumberland, all in between, reached out in an effort to try to assist Jefferson County. Those counties that are immediately surrounding Jefferson opened their doors to Jefferson County customers last week, even though we're getting close to the end of the month and their customers are their priority. We tried to assemble a great effort to assist Jefferson County's residents as well as the dealerships in Jefferson County. Some of that work continues today. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the great collaborative work of the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, particularly Heather Stout and the Cavis team, to, in quick fashion, be able to get 18 computers operational for Jefferson County employees to come to Frankfort and work for a couple days last week. Equally, Hardin County opened their door. They had 4 computers that were in a branch location that they opened to Jefferson County so they could continue to get dealer work accomplished during this outage. So great collaborative work on behalf of the county clerks, transportation, and vendors who were assisting in that effort.
Thank you very much. Very, very informative presentation this morning. We do have several questions, several people that do have questions, and we're going to try to get to each one of those. But I want to just want to mention this real quick. Thank you all for what you're doing. The Clerks Association, I know the clerks in my district do a phenomenal job and have been doing a phenomenal job. And I know there have been a lot of obstacles they've had to face and overcome, especially in the last several years. But I did want to ask really one thing real quick. You were talking about the vendors. How do you go about choosing those vendors? What's the process in that?
Sure. So particularly in elections?
Yes, in
Okay.
election. Yes, ma'am.
So there's a committee, the Election Assistance Committee in the federal government that will approve vendors. And then from there, vendors can apply here in the state of Kentucky. We have 2 approved vendors for election equipment in the state of Kentucky.
So we only have 2.
We only have 2. Yeah, we have Hart, InterCivic, and ES&S are the 2 vendors that we have approved here in Kentucky for election equipment. For electronic poll books, there's 4 approved vendors for the electronic poll books. Again, they have to go through a certification committee at the state level. That does include a clerk or 2, so there is some clerks that get to have a voice in that. So we're very appreciative of that.
Have they all been doing, in your opinion, equally as good a job as all of them doing as good as each other, or is there some that maybe you would consider doing their work better?
I think that individually as clerks, if we have an issue with our vendor, we take that up with them, and we're very open to having good dialogue with our vendors. There is a high level of expectation of our vendors. Every whether it's every election cycle, even in the off year, we're talking about ways that we can improve, things that we can do better. But I would say that the two election vendors that we have here in Kentucky are very responsive to clerks. If they weren't, I think we would all know about it.
Thank you. Representative Bauman, you are first on the list today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your great presentation. I deeply appreciate you being here today. My questions are around cybersecurity, so I do want to apologize to any of my colleagues that have already been through local government, if that's what you discussed in there. But thank you to you and your leadership as well. I think the way the counties all jumped in to help last week and even into this week is a testament to your leadership, and I appreciate that very much. So thank you and your colleagues for doing that. A number of my constituents, all of them actually, were impacted by that. So there was a lot of different feelings: frustration, gratefulness for others pitching in, and concern for what does this mean? Has my data been compromised? There's a lot of personal and financial information out there that people are worried about protecting. And so I'm curious as to what is the status of the FBI's investigation today, if you can share that with us. And also, as we do lead into the election, right on the heels of this cybersecurity attack, are we vulnerable as it relates to our elections, or has the vulnerability been identified and eliminated?
So I can't speak to the FBI as their status on this. What I can share with you is that Jefferson County has already implemented a lot of changes into what they're going to be doing with training with employees moving forward. They shared that with me last night. We were on a call late last night trying to identify where everything else was and if they were going to be able to open all offices this morning, which they had clearly assured me they were going to be able to. I think that, as we see in society every day, there's vulnerability, right? It's the best way to move forward, particularly with elections, though. Our election equipment is not connected to the internet in any way. It's not connected to a network in any way. So the scanners that you see at your voting location have no capability of connecting to the internet. So it's not dependent upon that. So that vulnerability is removed, right? Are there other things that we should be concerned with? Absolutely. What we do at the Clerks Association, we are hearing from our partners at the FBI, at CISA, Cybersecurity, Department of Homeland Security, on a monthly basis, in person, on a weekly, almost daily basis through electronic means. We have direct contacts for all sorts of people across all federal platforms in order to report things, even as simple as, they want to know, our U.S. postal inspectors want to know if we're not getting ballots back timely. They want to know if we have something returned. So there's a lot of partners at play to be sure that we're as secure as possible. But the part about elections and the security there is that, when it comes to the ballot machine, it's not connected. So that vulnerability does get removed. Clerk Holtzclaw announced during a press conference last week that I attended that personal data was not compromised in that attack at Jefferson County. So I will share that with you this morning. She shared that last week, that they had identified that there was no personal data, financial data that was impacted.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that puts a lot of people at ease knowing that the elections are safe from a similar type of attack, and also that their personal information was not compromised in this specific attack. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Senator Nemes.
Yes, thank you very much for being so informative and succinct. And you answered the question that I was going to ask, or the statement, is that our elections, that the machines are not online, because
Correct.
we get complaints about that all the time. And
I
of
know.
course, the books are online because you don't want to go from one spot to the other and not know that someone's already voted.
Correct.
But I want to, excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
but I
go
want
ahead,
to
please.
use this to inform some of our colleagues here. I'm very high on cyber, and help with the cyber being what we were trying to get a cyber center started, and we did a lot for the universities and that to educate our students into cyber to be able to do the things and stop the things that Jefferson County had. But you pointed out that the government, the FBI, the county clerks and all that are involved in the cyber center I was talking about is not just education, but it's also for government and things to use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Hodgson, you're next, please.
Thank you. I appreciate your ongoing partnership as we work on improving our election laws. And the question came up, a number of other states are starting to use split shift poll workers. There's a poll worker shortage everywhere. Some of our best resources are retired people, and frankly, people with a beard this color, it's getting harder and harder to work a 14-hour day at the polls. So is there any possibility under current law or any way we could change the law to allow a split shift on election day so people are only working maybe 7 or 8 hours?
So I think that you're going to find mixed opinions about this depending on which county you talk to. I certainly have some constituents in my county, Savannah, that we know that they would love to have a split shift. It would work out well if you knew that the second shift person was going to show up. The problem that we have is that what if they don't show? What if they decide at 2 o'clock that they're not going to show up, and then you're shorthanded then, and then that creates lines, and then we're contacted by our legislators because we have lines, right? So there's certainly concern about that, and about what that would look like on election day. I try to push most of our folks who are thinking they can't serve the full day on election day to at least try a day of early voting, because it is only 8 hours. But if you'd like to have the conversation, I'm sure the Clerks Association would be happy to sit down and talk about that more.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of questions and one real quick comment, if I could make a comment first.
Yes, go ahead.
My comment is about funding. And I had not realized it had been that many decades since you'd received any increases in funding. I would say it's time to look at that, and it's probably time to take action, because effectively, when we tell you that you need to do something and prices go up and we want something new, but we don't fund it, it's effectively an unfunded mandate on county clerk's offices, and we need to recognize that, and we'll take a serious look at that, hopefully this coming year, if not during the budget cycle.
That sounds great. Thank you.
I do have two quick questions, if you could.
Yes, quickly, please.
Yep. The first one is paper ballots. When you say that we have paper ballots, do we have 100% paper ballots, including the assisted ballots now?
That is correct. Yes,
Okay.
it's 100%. So even the machine that we use for ADA and Grant County, they can utilize a screen, so it's a touch screen. They could also use a puff and sip straw, which I have a constituent who uses that ability to vote. He is not mobile. He plugs in his straw and he votes his ballot, and then that ballot prints. It is not embedded barcode in Grant County, so he can clearly see every person that he voted for or she voted for, and then that ballot is scanned into the same machine that a regular paper ballot that's printed or pre-printed is scanned into.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my last question is, with respect to no excuse early voting, do you have any statistics or comment on as to the effectiveness, or I guess I would say the need for that? I've had some individuals question whether or not we should be doing that when we could have 3-day voting anyway, and it's no excuse, so why can't they come vote, that sort of thing. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Are you speaking of the 6 days
Yes.
of absentee that's in a lot of places it's in the county clerk's office? It's underutilized. Honestly, it's a resource within the Clerks Association. We have discussed how could we better serve our constituents, because we're not seeing the amount of people that we would need to see in order to we have to separate machines for that, right? So I can't use that machine in any other capacity besides those 6 days. We're not seeing the numbers that we thought that we would. But prior to COVID, counties could open their absentee machines when they wanted to. So in Grant County, we opened 30 days before because there's a location in Florida. It's technically called Winter Haven. In Grant County, we call that Weemstown South, Senator Thayer. And they had a date that they wanted to leave in October, and I needed to make sure the machines were open so they could come and vote prior to that. Can't do that anymore. We've instituted, they take care of mail absentee ballots because they are out of town, but those 6 days by far are underutilized by voters and essentially a burden to the funding aspect of it.
It's an additional cost that you're absorbing,
Absolutely.
but not necessarily.
We're not seeing the benefit of it at this point.
Okay, I think, again, that's something I think we should be looking at this next session.
Absolutely. We'll be happy to have that conversation.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. We have one more question, and this will be the last question in this section because we have other presenters that we need to move on to. Representative Tipton, you may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tabitha, good to see you today.
Good to see you too.
I'll piggyback on a couple of Representative Johnson's comments, and I understand. I think probably people aren't aware of the availability of those 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
I will also comment, I think without having that in statute, it opens up the possibility of litigation, that we are depriving voters of the opportunity to vote. So that's a consideration as well. Tabitha, I just want to personally thank you. Came to my attention, you had a meeting with my Spencer County clerk. They had staffing shortages. People were out the door. When you got there, you didn't have your meeting. You just logged in and waited on customers all day. And I want to personally thank you for doing that, helping
You're
out the
welcome.
folks in Spencer. And I know some other counties sent staff over as well, and that's very much appreciated. On the subject of funding, could you refresh my memory and clarify for the members, what exactly do the clerks in the counties receive in state funding to help them with elections?
So there's 3 different pots of funding. One is per precinct, and as we know, that's not an adequate way to fund is by precinct. In my small county, before I consolidated some things during this last reapportionment, there was 22 precincts. We didn't have a need for 22 precincts, but you got funding based off of precincts. So that was, something that we looked at. Even though my county knew that it was going to reduce the amount of funding that we were going to receive, we now have fewer precincts, but the amount that we're saving in poll workers alone is $25,000 a year in my small county. It was a huge impact to be able to do that so that I didn't have to have 4 people required to sit at a table together when only 1 or 2 really did all the work. Not a knock on my poll workers at all. It was just the nature of the defined roles of precinct voting. So then there's 25 cents per voter that's registered in your county, and then there's a per 50 cents per new registrant amount. So those amounts, we're seeing, 25 cents per voter is not much. It doesn't go very far, even in a large county. When you look at what they're having to spend in elections now, it is not close to being adequate to be able to fund those elections. And we have a spreadsheet that we'd be more than happy to share with the committee to break down what that looks like for each county. If you're interested in knowing your counties, we'll be happy to share that. You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much again for your presentation today and for your answering of all the questions. We appreciate your time, and again, thank you all for what you do. And I know a big election is coming up, and I know the clerks are going to do a great job on that. Thank you again for being with us this morning. Our next presentation today is going to be from the Finance and Administration Cabinet, and they are going to come and give us an update on the renovation and the construction on our Capitol campus here. So please come to the table, anyone that's going to speak today, and once you're seated, we will have you introduce yourself for the record. We will start at my right to the gentleman there on this side, and please introduce yourself, sir, and we'll go across and everyone introduce yourself for the record. Go ahead, please.
I'm Sam Ruth, Commissioner of Facilities.
Is your microphone on, sir? You might need to pull it close to you. Push it until the green light is on.
Green light's on.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm
Speak.
Sam Ruth, Commissioner of Facilities and Support Services.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Holly Johnson. I'm the Secretary of the Finance and Administration Cabinet.
Good morning, I'm John Ard. I'm the Executive Director for the Office of Fleet Management.
Again, we appreciate you all coming to be with us today. We had requested that you come and just give us an update on what was going on out here that we all see, but please proceed and let us know how things are going and what's happening.
Absolutely. We were here, I think, last year about this time, as a matter of fact. Again, just to remind you, this is a $287 million project. This is a 120-year-old building, the Capitol is. We are doing, actually, we're adding $5 million to do some fourth floor work. I think that the legislature gave us to help do some work there to give you all some rooms that you all wanted there. So we are working that for a total of a $291.5 million project. The initial phase began review and design of mechanical, electrical, and design elements and some exterior renovations several years ago, and found that there were things that needed to be done, and the project, of course, has expanded since that time. We have selected the architect and engineering firms of EOP and PDP. As I said, as preliminary work was undertaken, more detailed information has come to light regarding the conditions and needs of the 120-year-old building. Often restorations were more expansive than originally planned, where we originally were told a restoration would occur. Upon further examination, total replacement was needed. We worked with the engineering and design firm to determine what was required for building preservation, occupant and visitor safety, and security and code compliance. As the architectural firm has completed their detailed investigation of the Capitol, some challenges were encountered and required a redo of certain elements of the planning and design of the project, as well as some cost issues. We are working through those. The governor is meeting with the Speaker and the Senate President soon to go through what we've found and what that means for the project. The project's authorizing language through the capital budgets consistently references mechanical, electrical, and plumbing infrastructure upgrades to the Capitol, and recently specified dome and lantern renovation, security windows, and repairs to comply with building codes. We are able to meet the project scope and stay within budget. When we were here last year, we testified about the current building occupants and the discussions we were having regarding space needs. At that time, we told the committee that the architectural firm and the cabinet had held multiple discussions with the legislative branch, and we were considering various options to accommodate its needs. Ultimately, the decision was to erect a temporary building for the General Assembly sessions. To assure continuity of government and the continuous availability of the House and Senate chambers until temporary chambers are ready for occupancy, the renovation of the Capitol will begin once the temporary chambers are in place and after the 2025 regular session. Therefore, construction will begin June 2025, and multiple bid packages will go out later this year and into the next. The project is estimated to take 3.5 years to complete, and the other occupants of the Capitol have identified space and are currently working with their division of real properties to fit up that space to meet their needs. This includes the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, the Governor's Office, and the Supreme Court. All tenant agencies will be held harmless, and the project will bear the cost of relocation and associated rents.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, either one of you have anything to add this morning?
No, sir.
All right. We have a question. Representative Baumann has the first question.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. My question is for you, Mr. Ruth. I would like to understand better if you could give the committee an update on the status of the juvenile justice facility in Jefferson County. I know some of our colleagues went out there last year to take a look. Representative Herron, Representative Witten, and Representative Bratcher, I believe. And I was hoping you could provide just a short progress update on that.
I really didn't bring information to talk on that. I can get that to you if you'd like.
Well, can you just provide us with any type of update on the progress towards opening that facility?
We're working with the city to determine how we're going to have a handover from them to DJJ. We've got to finish the design of the building. There's still quite a bit that has to be worked out before it can.
Mr. Ruth,
before
I'm
it-
sorry to interrupt you. I don't think we're picking up your conversation on the recording. If you could just pull that really close to you this morning, if you don't mind, please, and go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead,
Right,
please.
Like I say, we've got a lot of things we've got to work out before we can finish the design and get the property transferred over and get the construction started.
Okay, so best case scenario, we're looking at what for potential?
Right now, I don't have an estimated completion on it. There's still too many things we have to work out to give you a date.
Do you see a benefit maybe in setting a target date to generate a sense of urgency, or at least that we're working towards something, an actual date and time?
The urgency is we're trying to get this done as quickly as possible, but there's still too many things that we have to work out before it can be transferred and the construction can start.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Representative Tipton, you are next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you all being here and give us the update. Now, based on your testimony, am I correct that the General Assembly will be in the Capitol for the 2025 session?
No, we are expected to have completion of the temporary building at the end of December.
Okay,
So it's just very close to
sure.
the session. So we didn't want to plan for the moving and everything right up on that time. So we do expect that you will hold your session in the temporary chamber this year.
Okay.
But we didn't want to be extremely disruptive during
Sure.
the session and have to force things to happen very quickly at that time. So we wanted
You
to
had
build in a
mentioned a
little time.
June 25 construction start date, so I just wanted clarification on that.
Yes.
What is if I may ask another question, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
what is the cost of the temporary structure, and are the plans to, after the project at the Capitol is complete, to tear that structure down and remove it? What are the future plans for that structure?
Sam, do you know the cost of the temporary structure?
The temporary structure will be about $14 million, and it's going to be, the plan is to be able to disassemble it and use it somewhere else. Where that is, I don't know,
Okay.
but it can be torn down and removed.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Mills, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So from last year, I remember we asked the questions about the constitutional officers moving out of the Capitol. So your testimony today said that everybody was moving out. So does that include the governor's office as well? They will be fully moved out to another location?
Yes, I mean, we had looked at multiple options to perhaps do some work and leave some tenants in the building, but ultimately the makeup of the mechanical in the building and the construction and the marble and the echoes, it's just not going to allow for anyone to ultimately remain in the building. So, yes, we will be having to vacate
Okay.
the building under construction.
Very good. Thank you.
Senator Wheeler.
Mr. Chair, I had the same question as Representative Tipton, so I'm fine.
All right, thank you. And Representative Camuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a simple question, I think. Can you just give us a brief update or give us an idea of what's going to happen with the fourth floor in the Capitol?
Well, the fourth floor is my understanding that there's going to be some rooms that you can meet in there, and that is from the legislature's request. We are designing that space at the request of what legislative leadership has asked for, and they've had input into the ultimate design of that. I do know that we've had to do some work on the roof. Sam, you can help maybe a little bit with this. The roof is, of course, if you've been up there, we have to increase the height there. There's some work there that has to be done.
You're exactly right. For code compliance,
Yes.
the roof is too low. I've got to stoop to get through some hallways. Also, the concrete that makes up part of the roof is deteriorating and needs to be replaced. As the Secretary said earlier, we had hoped to refurb it and renovate it, but on further study, it can't be fixed. It has to be replaced. So there's going to be an extensive amount of concrete work up there that has to be done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Senator Mills has a follow-up question.
I do. Mr. Ruth, I just had a question. We were talking about the length of this construction project is going to be 3.5 or 4 years. Do you anticipate, specifically you yourself, Mr. Ruth, will you stay with the project the whole way, all the way through, as far as the tenure of your team that you've put together, to where there won't be any disconnecting of the continuity of the folks that are in charge of making the major decisions and the planning?
Yes, I hope to hold on to my job that long.
Very good. All right. Thank you.
Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, thank you for the update today. This is a rather newsy committee here today because you've informed us something new, and as a member of the Legislative Research Commission myself, I have always been under the impression that the General Assembly will meet in the Capitol in 2025. Doesn't make much difference to me. I hope to be someplace warmer come January 7th, but a lot of other people in this room are concerned about that, and the executive director of the LRC is here, and I double-checked with him, and the understanding is that the next General Assembly was going to be in the Capitol. So why the change?
Okay. Well, then I must have misspoken, because the completion in December, I was under the impression that was so that the General Assembly would be able to meet there. But I will certainly defer to the director of LRC that you are meeting in the Capitol, and that is why we are going to wait till June. But with the completion at the end of December and moving toward that date very hard, that was what I thought we were doing. So.
Well, maybe everybody could get together and talk about it and report back to this committee.
I just know we were working very hard to get this completed at the end of the year. So.
And then, may I have a follow-up, Mr. Chairman? I also understood that the governor wasn't planning on going anywhere in terms of office in the Capitol. So is that new as well, that he's finally decided to be a team player and move out with the rest of the constitutional officers while our Capitol is renovated?
I don't know that there was ever a question about whether he was moving out or not moving out, whether that was ever decided or not decided that he would or would not move out.
But as far as you know, as of today, the plan is for all constitutional offices located in the Capitol to move to temporary facilities?
That's my understanding, yes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other questions? Well, we've had, thank you again for your presentation. I think several of us have been confused here this morning, because I think a lot of us were under the impression that we were going to be in the Capitol in 2025, and then you inform us that we're not, and then Mr. Hart says that we are. So I think the testimony has been more confusing than helpful, to be frank about it.
I do apologize. I know that we are working very hard to complete the building by the end of the year. So,
thank you very much. We are going to be moving on to our next, and I think you folks are going to just remain right there at the table and speak to us about the current status of the state vehicle pool. I know you've already introduced yourself for the record, so you don't have to do that again. But you may proceed, and whoever's going to speak on that, Mr. Ard, are you going to do that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You may proceed at this time, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chairs, Senator Mills and Representative Hale. Also, good morning to the majority and minority floor leaders, Senator.
If I could ask you, please maybe move your
Yes,
mic a little closer, so we want to make sure we get everything.
Is that better, sir?
Just try it again.
Good morning.
That's good. Thank you.
Senator Mills and Representative Hale. Good morning also majority and minority floor leaders, Senator Thayer and Representative Graham. And also good morning to the many other distinguished members of the committee. I'm John Ard, as I said earlier. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Fleet Management. It's an honor to be here today to share an update on the state of the Commonwealth's fleet of passenger motor vehicles. Fleet currently manages approximately 4,000 agency-assigned motor pool and Schedule II passenger vehicles for use by state agencies all across the Commonwealth. In recent years, we have undertaken and implemented some notable changes. In 2022, as I'm sure you're aware, during the regular session, the legislature passed Senate Bill 158, establishing the Office of Fleet Management and replacing the previous Division of Fleet Management. At the same time, the legislation also established two new divisions under the Executive Director, the Maintenance Division and the Operations and Administration Division. As part of the reorganization, we also established an important new position, allowing us to hire a Policy and Compliance Officer whose role, among other things, is to thoroughly know, review, pursue timely updates to statutes, regulations, policies, and policies that govern the purchase, retirement, management, and use of state passenger motor vehicles. In May 2023, Fleet Management transitioned to a new fleet management software system, which includes a component called Key Valet. Key Valet, the new system, enables us to offer customers the option to pick up and return motor vehicles at the motor pool location in Frankfort via the Key Valet kiosk 24/7. Further, to improve security at Fleet, we've updated exterior lighting and replaced our largely inoperable legacy system with a more modern security system. The new security system provides 24/7 video coverage of both the Fleet maintenance garage and motor pool parking lots. Fleet is in the process of also replacing the chain link fence along the south tree-lined side of the maintenance garage parking lot with solid steel fencing panels to better prevent break-ins and theft. Over the last 2 years, Fleet has adopted a more comprehensive, proactive preventative maintenance program based on the manufacturer's recommended maintenance schedules. Finally, Fleet and Facilities recently completed the bid process, and we have selected a vendor to replace Fleet's car wash at the motor pool location in Frankfort. That car wash has been inoperable for several years now. Still, Fleet does face some challenges. The age of the fleet is one such challenge. In recent years, supply chain issues significantly lengthened the manufacturer's vehicle order fulfillment timeline, preventing timely replacement of aging fleet vehicles. Many ordered vehicles do not arrive before the end of the fiscal year, and that significantly erodes each year's effective spending authority. The result is Fleet is not able to successfully purchase the number of vehicles each year needed to effectively manage the age of the fleet. In an effort to mitigate the issue, Fleet has shifted to ordering vehicles as early in the fiscal year as practical. Additionally, this past year, the manufacturer's order fulfillment timeline began to improve. Early ordering and better delivery timelines combined to greatly improve order fulfillment this last fiscal year. In conclusion, the men and women at the Office of Fleet Management continue to work hard to manage the Commonwealth's fleet of passenger vehicles and provide our customers, the many other state agencies across the Commonwealth, vehicles they need to do their job. Again, I thank the committee for having the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir, for that update on the state vehicle pool fleet. We appreciate your time today. We do have two questions. The first is going to come from Senator Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Arndt, practically speaking, when the state goes to purchase vehicles moving forward, are you under any constraint? Are your divisions under any constraints on buying certain type of vehicles, certain amount of electric vehicles versus combustion engine vehicles or hybrids? Is that in place in your purchasing authority?
Sir, we have both state and federal requirements that dictate to us what we have to shoot for in terms of alternative fuel vehicles. And we meet those requirements each year. But as far as additional constraints, I saw some legislation that I believe was modified before it was passed this year that said all vehicles had to have a internal combustion engine. Right. But I don't believe, my recollection is, I'll have to research that and get back to you, but I don't believe that stayed in the final bill.
So that's kind of your answer is kind of confusing. So is there a requirement for the state government to purchase a certain amount of electric vehicles
No.
yearly?
No, sir.
Is there one are you operating under the constraint now that every vehicle has to be a combustion engine?
No,
Or-
no,
No.
sir.
Okay. So you're fully following federal guidelines now and not state guidelines? Is
Both
that what you-
federal and state. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
But there are not any state guidelines at this point? is
There are
that
state guidelines on alternative fuel vehicles, but it gives us the full gamut of alternative fuel vehicles to
Right.
fulfill that requirement.
correct? Okay. All righty. I may get with you offline and talk about that a little bit more. So
Yes, sir.
thank you so much.
Representative Tipton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you all bringing this to our attention today. Just for our information, how many state vehicles are there in your fleet pool, and how many employees have a vehicle assigned to them?
I can give you an exact number. So there's different categories of vehicles, but the ones that we actually manage is a little over 4,000, approximately 4,000. There's also many more vehicles that in KSP and
Sure,
other agencies
transportation cabinet.
that we don't actively manage. As far as PAVs, we research that. We get reports. We build a report every year on that. I don't have that number with me, but I will certainly get back to you with that exact number.
As a follow-up, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
I know you have contracts for volume. How much of a savings does the state have on our state contracts when we purchase in volume versus like an individual going out and purchasing a vehicle?
So
Roughly.
Well, the state gets state prices via the MAs that are, but it's not a volume discount involved in that. We do ask if there is a dealer that's going to offer a volume discount, that they state that, so we can handle that bid or that quote appropriately. But we know based on our current process, we are confident based on our current process that we are saving significant funds every year. But frankly, the price of vehicles have grown tremendously over the last few years.
Price of everything is going up.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and,
All right.
and also a fleet vehicle is generally a base vehicle. You know,
Sure.
you're not getting leather, and you're not getting sunroofs, and you're not getting a lot of the bells and whistles
Sure.
when you're getting a fleet
Okay.
designated.
Mr. Sheriff,
vehicle.
just one more brief question.
Yes.
What's the typical lifespan of one of your vehicles?
As I said in the statement, we are struggling with the age of the fleet. So right now, I'm replacing 2007 and 2008 vehicles. Those are too old, and we're working on that.
Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is, I think, a follow-up to Senator Mills's question, because I'm still not clear. Maybe I need to be offline with you guys as well. I don't know. But state requirements for alternative fuel vehicles, are those based on statute that we've passed into law as a regulation?
Yes, sir. 45 Alpha 625 is the state statute on alternative fuel vehicles.
45 Alpha 625?
Yes, sir. KRS.
Right. And so it mandates what?
In simple terms, sir,
Right.
50% of the 50% of the vehicles that we have in the fleet need to be alternative fuel, and the fleet has met that requirement for years and continues to meet that. It is becoming more of a struggle, but that's probably more for an offline conversation.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
But and then we have the federal guidelines that we're also comply with.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Seeing no other questions at this time, thank you all very much for your presentation today. We appreciate you being here. Thank the members again today for being at the meeting. The next meeting date will be Thursday, August 22nd at 1 p.m. That will be at the Kentucky State Fair. Everyone have a good afternoon and a good summer. We are adjourned.